welcome everyone. It's great to have you back, or welcome for the first time to our Level Up webinar series. We do this for Razor's Edge NXT. We do this from the fourth Wednesday of every month at noon Eastern time. We're happy to be here for you, and hopefully to provide some education and some content to help you use Razor's Edge a little bit more efficiently. So we're going to start with our agenda for today. We're going to do some introductions. We're going to ask you to introduce yourself as well in the chat or the Q&A, wherever you have access to do that. And then we're going to get into it. We have a few questions to ask to kind of see where everyone's at. And then we'll start addressing some of the questions that you submitted by email to Christine also. So we had some questions left over from a previous Ask Us Anything that we've kind of summarized and we put together. And so, but as we're going through today, we encourage you to comment in the chat or the Q&A if there's something you want to add to what we're talking about, or if you have a kind of a follow-up question in the areas that we're going to be talking about today. I am recording this today, so I will send out the recording and the slide deck and also some other information by the end of the week. So don't fret if you have to leave early or jump for any reason. You will have a copy of everything that we're going to be discussing. Christine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So hi, everybody. I'm Christine. I'm the services manager here at NPact, which means that I do some of our software consulting, working in Razor's Edge and Virtuous. I also oversee a team of consultants, so I help them with their projects and helping make sure that their clients are getting everything they need. I am currently based in Charlotte, North Carolina, but as previously mentioned, I've got some deep Midwest roots as well.
Cool. Thank you.
Pass it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kevin Wood. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. I worked in the nonprofit world for 15 years as a database manager in Blackbaud shops. So I was at a healthcare foundation for a couple of years. I worked at a university for a couple of years, and then I was at a high school here in Cincinnati for 10 years, doing all things data management. I was an independent consultant for a number of those years, and then I joined NPact, just started my fourth year. So I've been a Razor's Edge consultant. I still do deliver a little bit of work. And then now I'm director of sales. So I oversee all of the sales processes for our consulting and also our technology as well. So again, thank you all for being here. And if you haven't had a chance yet, we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. And so we know who's joining us. So we are a Blackbaud channel partner. That does not give us any insider information for what's coming on a roadmap for any of the Blackbaud products. So we find out about new releases and functionality moving from database view to web view at the same time that you do. A couple places, though, that will give us kind of an idea about what's new, but also what's coming down the line. Two different things we want to call out here. When you log into Razor's Edge NXT on your home screen in web view, the first thing you see is the what's new section. Oftentimes we just kind of ignore it because we have a direction we're going to go, and there's things we need to do. But take a look at that. Blackbaud puts their updates in the what's new section at least once a week. And so, I just took this screenshot this morning. There was an update to the gift detail and summary report in WebView that was put out yesterday. So very kind of evergreen information for you to keep abreast of what's coming, what's moving. The other thing that we'll like to call out is the product update briefings. Those were just held a couple weeks ago for all the products. So if you use any other Blackbaud products, there was a pub for each one. And there'll be a link to where you can go and see those recordings when I send out the slide deck. So I've got a couple
Kevin,
questions.
one quick thing before we go on.
Yeah.
One of the big announcements that was made recently was the change coming with Query, as well as the sunset date for Razor's Edge. And you may already know this, but I think it's worth highlighting just because it is big news for all of us, and we do need to prepare for it. So currently, Query as it is slated to be moved only to WebView as of February of 2026. So if you have not started using Query in WebView, it's a good time to start getting comfortable with it. With that in mind, currently also all of database view potentially could be gone by the end of the first half of 2027. I say potentially because we all know things can change. but let's be realistic and let's try and start moving ourselves a little bit more to WebView as we go. All right.
Yeah.
I'm done. Let's go to our
Awesome.
poll.
Thank you. All right. Our first poll question that we'd like to ask you all, that's going to launch now, is how long have you been using Razor's Edge? How long have you used Razor's Edge? So this gives us a good idea of kind of where everyone's at. Dina, brand new. Awesome. Welcome. I say this every
pretty
month.
Good number of 10 plus veterans
Yeah,
here.
I say this every month for the people that have been using Razor's Edge for 10 plus years. I applaud you for wanting to continue learning and continuing your education in the product. Absolutely. Because I've been using it for almost 20 years and I still learn things. And actually, we're going to talk about something I just learned yesterday later on, which is kind of exciting.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, next question, and this is not a multiple choice question. This is the first time we've done this one. Is what is your relationship? I should add it. What is your relationship status with Razor's Edge? We're going to do like a 1 to 5, and I believe as you begin to answer, you'll see everyone's. It'll kind of average everyone's responses. I think it worked yesterday when we were practicing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as you're voting right now, we're at a 3.1 average, which is just okay. Hopefully by the end of today, we'll bump that a little bit closer to 4, maybe even a 5. I don't know. We're at 3.0, so like exactly average, which is cool. All right, so we're going to jump into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is online giving. So this is a question we got in a lot of different formats. So we kind of tried to summarize it into this kind of general questions. How can I avoid duplicates for constituent records through the online giving form? One of the things, if you've been using the online giving forms through WebView for a number of years, when they first came out, the duplicate matching was very kind of loose and there was a lot of duplicates getting created and it kind of happened automatically. And so I think Blackbaud has done a really good job of changing, increasing the efficiency of finding matches within your database before creating that new record. But one of the settings I want to call out, because this is kind of buried under settings and control panel. My memory serves me correctly. Yeah, under control panel, we have an option here for gift management. And once my RE loads, we'll click on that. And this is just in our sandbox, so there's no information we're sharing that you shouldn't be seeing. But one of the tiles we see under gift management is online data review. And so when we select edit here, I believe out of the box, this first one is selected. You use automatic constituent matching. So what that's doing is you're telling Razor's Edge, hey, do your best to find a match for the person that made a gift online. If you can't find it, go ahead and create that new record. I encourage clients that are worried about doing that and creating all these duplicates is to select review transactions with unmatched constituents. And what happens there is when that online gift is made and Razor's Edge goes and tries to find a match for that constituent, it doesn't find it, it'll flag that gift in the unapproved batch. So you'll need to go in and decide what you want to do with that gift. Either create the new constituent, or if you know it's someone that's already in your database, you can kind of point it to the new constituent before you approve the batch. The third option here is just to review everything. There could be a need for that, I guess, maybe if you have a lot of records with a lot of similar names, or a lot of big families with juniors and seniors and thirds and fourths and whatever else. So that could be an option as well. But I encourage clients to just kind of leave it here in this middle, so you can confirm those matches before they come in.
One thing I do want to mention to that, and we're not able to show you this because this is a fake database and all the information in it is fake. So we don't have any real online gifts to show you. But when you are in the batch review section, Kevin, can you go to the gift batch area and go to the overview for me, please? Up to gifts.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's what you said. I clicked online giving. My mind was in online giving, but you said gift.
Yeah. So see that section that says needs attention, and this says no issues currently need attention. If you're using one of the match settings, like Kevin said, this will show you right here under needs attention, these are the matches you need to look at. I have seen some people skip that section, go down to the batch and just approve the batch and put it in. If you do that, you will create duplicates. So keep in mind, if there's something under needs attention, don't skip over it. Make sure you address it and take care of it. It needs attention for lack of redundant, or well, for redundancy's sake there, but make sure you address that.
Yeah, and I would just point out here, so we do have a bunch of phony data in here, that this is where your batches live. Once the gifts are made online, the batches go here in an unapproved state. You need to go in and approve them. I've seen clients that, and I think Christine might have just mentioned, completely ignore this and never approve any batches, and you have batches going in here maybe years even. So keep an eye on this as you're kind of monitoring the activity that's coming in through your donation forms, because this is where you go to approve those batches.
And this is really messy and bad because it's our test environment. So please do what we're saying, not what you're seeing that we have set up in our screen. The next section that we wanted to address for today, consent is something that is becoming more and more relevant for all of us. So when it first rolled out, I believe it was around 2018, I was working as a consultant at the time. I remember it coming out. I remember hearing David Ziedman talk about it at BBCon. And I went and I listened, and it didn't make any sense to me at all. No offense to David Ziedman. But the reason was because, as my accent may very well tell you, I am American, as I know many of you are. And consent didn't make any sense to me because there was nothing it did that I couldn't do with a solicit code as far as I could tell. So I tucked it away in my head and I didn't do much else with it until I started working for David Ziedman and his company. And I also was working with British clients as well as American clients. I know this is a lot of my story, but I hope it helps you understand my context. In the UK, GDPR is a very big deal. And in order for them to follow that, the law and legislation of that, they have to not only know that someone unsubscribed, they have to know when they unsubscribed, how they unsubscribed, all the documentation around that. And that's really what consent is set up to do. But we didn't need all of that in the US for a long time. Some states are starting to now. But the part that's really pushing this to the forefront of us wanting to talk about it is the fact that consent is now being built into web view forms. And there are now options for us to say, what does this person want to receive when they're filling it out? So it's helpful to know how to set it up and how to work with that information. So I did give you a quick screenshot here just so you can see where this lives. It's under configuration and database view. Go to business rules and then consent options. And Kevin, if you can screen share and start with database view, and we're going to go there. So config, business rules, and then consent options. And I did the screenshot because I figured that would be helpful for all of you when you try to go back and look at the slides and retrace the steps. So you can see here, we've got a couple different consent mappings already set up. Let's go ahead and open the email with any of them. But so basically what this is telling us is the channel is email. The category is quite honestly redundant to also be email. Normally, I would recommend that category gave us more information, such as this is our alumni email. This is our MailChimp list. This is our newsletter list. Those are going to be really what you need that category to be. The channels are prescribed by Blackbaud. You cannot change that. You might be able to add to them, but I don't believe you can. The categories are customizable by your organization. So those are code table entries that you put in. Once you have that set, here in consent, you have to set up the solicit codes for every combination of channel and category that you're going to use. It does take a little bit of time to do that, but once you've done that, it means that when people choose their consent options, it automatically updates their solicit codes. So all of your queries, all of those things will work. So everything on the left is what happens to the solicit codes, what solicit codes are assigned when they make those actions. And then on the right is what happens for the removal of solicit codes. So for this example, when they opt out, we add the solicit code of do not mail. We're not removing anything on the right.
Yeah,
what we probably would want to do.
Yeah, an example of of what solicit code you might want to remove. So often we use solicit codes for inclusion or exclusion. So if someone calls the office and says, "Hey, I'd love to get the newsletter," you're going to give them a solicit code of request newsletter. So maybe in this example, a solicit code that you're assigning is do not mail. The one you're removing is request newsletter.
Right. And you would do a reverse. So on the second row where it says opt in, we have include in email blast. The remove should say do not email or do not mail, whatever the case may be. The no response probably isn't relevant for the majority of you on the call today. That is, again, something that comes up in GDPR. They actually have to track opt in, opt out, and people who just didn't respond either way. I cannot tell you what they have to do with that information, but that's how that works. So Carrie, you don't have to move it to solicit codes, but you might want to consider it just because that's more and more the functionality that WebView is leaning to, and more of the built-in functionality for suppressions and things does lean to that. So it's at this point, you don't have to, but you might have to at some point in the future. We could add a solicit code to a record in either database view or WebView. I do want to show you on WebView at least, so you have a bit of a visual for what that looks like.
And I just want to make a call back to what I said before about functionality. Like there are certain things you can still only do in database view. This is a great example of one of them. This just doesn't exist in WebView yet. So yeah, this is one of the places we have to go for database view is to set up consent. So you want me to go to WebView now?
Yes, let's go to WebView.
Right, cool.
So go ahead and you can pick whoever you like. So Melanie, no, you don't have to. One of the things that's really nice about consent is that it keeps a history of all the changes the donor has made or the constituent has made over time. So if I opted into the email today and then I opt out tomorrow and then I opt back in next week, consent will show you a trail of all those things. And every time a new consent is added, the solicit codes are updated, which is why it was created, because in GDPR, the organizations had to be able to show all of those changes. So you don't have to delete any old dates to add a new one. It just keeps building. So when you open the consent here, you choose the channel. So let's stick with email. You could do something else, but I'd rather stick with what we're doing. I don't know why, but on this screen, you have to click on the select category on the right. And then choose your category. Again, email is really redundant, but it is what it is. Go ahead and choose that, save that. And then you would choose yes or no. So whatever they're if they chose this or not, assuming that this is probably going to get filled in on your forms most of the time, but we're filling it out manually. And then click on details. And this will answer the question Susan just asked. This is where you choose your source for that information, the date that it was given to you. If it's being filled out on a form, obviously you don't have to fill it out. It's going to choose that source and that consent date. So the source is where did you get the information from? That consent is the date you got the information. Consent statement and privacy notice, again, there may be very good uses for you, but they're here again because there was a legal requirement for other people. So the consent statement would be, do you want emails? It kind of helps you recognize what did the person respond to, of how did you phrase it wherever they saw it. And then the privacy notice is tracking that link of privacy information. Again, it's not a legal requirement at this time in the US. I cannot speak to Canada. Some states do have more, but I think at this point, those are more for our friends in the UK and Europe, but useful for you to know about.
So then when you save it, you do see the date here.
You do. Susan. And you would also see, if you go up to the solicit codes, you would see anything that we had in our settings. You would then see it. And the fun of WebView is finding your solicit codes and things, because they're all over the place. We chose an opt-in, so it doesn't add one because we didn't have it marked to add one for an opt-in, but it would update your solicit codes as well. Cool. Those are queryable. So I do want to mention that, and then I'll pass it back to Kevin. You can query on dates for consent. So if you wanted to know who's opted out this year or things like that, you wouldn't have that with just solicit codes. All right.
Yeah.
Enough about our fun consent. Oh, still me.
Yeah.
So the other thing, sorry. The other thing that we wanted to mention today, I think one of the best things about WebView is the ability to automate our recurring gifts. Now, we aren't yet able to automate the pledge payments by credit card if they're already existing. I do believe they're automated if they're created in the web form. I have to verify that. But you can automate your recurring gifts that are being paid by credit card and direct debit two ways. The first is on the screen in front of you. I had to pull this from an actual database, so I have blacked out the name and batch number and ID number so that it's not identifiable. But the part that's really important is the convert to automated recurring gift. If you see that button on a credit card or direct debit payment, you can click on that and that will allow that gift to automatically be charged in the background. However, if you have, say, 300 recurring gifts that you want to automate, if you go to our next slide.
Yeah. Hold on. Before we jump off that, I just
go for it.
One point of clarification for this. You need to, from the gift, from the either the constituent record, you can also get there through a gift list, but this is the original recurring gift.
Yes.
For the constituent. So not any of the the recurring gift payments. This is the original recurring gift. You would open that gift up in WebView, and if you see this button here, you can click on it to convert. And there's a couple of follow-up questions about which BBMS account you want to use.
Yes.
And that thing, the other thing to point out is there are, I think, a half dozen different schedules that the recurring gift have to fall into in order for it to be able to be converted to a recurring gift. So, for example, if you have an irregular schedule for your recurring gifts, you cannot set it up to automate. You'll still need to do that manually. But if I think about it, I'll include the knowledge base for their schedules. It's all the big ones. It's monthly, quarterly, annually, and maybe there's like there's a fourth, maybe a couple other ones. But all the big schedules will line up here, but they have to fall under one of those.
Yes. And we'll also include this. There is also the start date of your recurring gift has to have the same day of the month as the payment. So for example, if I make my gift on the 15th of every month, in database view, it doesn't matter what my start date is. It just picks the 15th right after that. So if mine said May 1st, it would still work just fine. When you're automating it, you have to have that start date be the same day of the month. So mine would have to be May 15th or April 15th. It just has to have that date, the day part of the date has to match. If yours don't match, there are ways to do an import of amendments and update that and fix that and make that work. We can send you that documentation on what that looks like. From the knowledge base, but I just want to mention that is a cleanup. I've had to do that for a few clients who we had a bunch to automate. We just had to amend that start date, and then it was just fine to use the tool that's on this screen of automate manual recurring gifts. That's what allows us to say we have 300. We want to go ahead and move them all over. Anytime you're doing a bulk change to recurring gifts, you are going to work with amendments instead of adjustments. If you have a large group of them, you can, in database view, import amendments. If you haven't done a lot of importing, I would definitely recommend that you look at the documentation because there's several different pieces you do need. But I see that about customizing the timeline for recurring gifts. If you want to add, you could go in and do an amendment and add your end date for all of them to say they all end at this time. That would just add your end date and stop them from pulling. You would also need to go back later and mark them as completed or terminated or on hold. For that situation, I would say they're completed. And I would do that after the fact just so they don't show up as active anymore. Oh, glad to help with that. I know those automations, like finding that little tip is a needle in a haystack. Sometimes it makes a big difference.
And on behalf of everyone's accounting and finance office, if you do anything like amending anything like recurring gifts, pledge installments as well, but we're talking about recurring gifts. If you're going to be amending anything, make sure you at least have a conversation with with your CFO or your accountant to just confirm that they're not doing anything with any kind of cash flow that's going to be coming in from recurring gifts. We just want to make sure that we're paying attention to both sides of the office here. So sometimes they do care about when we're looking at a cash flow report that includes recurring gifts as opposed to just pledge payments. They may be looking at those sort of things. So anytime we're going to be amending any kinds of schedules or even finishing or completing recurring gifts, just make sure you have a little conversation to make sure everyone's on the same page with what that looks like. Anything else, Christine?
No, I think that's everything for that.
Cool. So we're going to jump over to fee coverage. This is something that came out probably a couple years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, with the different options of. And I'm actually I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm actually going to jump over here to a donation form, and just so I can point out what we're talking about here. So when we are doing, I'm just going to go do a standard form. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to see. When we are creating or even editing a form that already exists, once we select a merchant account, we have these options for fee coverage. And there's 3 different options here. I'm just kind of going to go through them and what they mean and what it means for you as an organization, but then also as for your donor's perspective as well. So kind of historically, what we've always done, or what was always an option if you're still using Online Express, my organization pays is kind of the standard. So someone gives $100, you're going to net, depending on what credit card they'll use, you're going to net like 97 something and some change. And then the organization just kind of eats the cost of the credit card fees. That's what kind of the old school method is. My organization pays. What Blackbaud has rolled out as these couple other options as well. So Blackbaud pays. I always say you get 100% of 100% of the donation. So someone gives $100, you're going to get $100. When you select this option, Blackbaud is going to prompt the donor to give an additional amount. That amount goes to Blackbaud. It doesn't go to you. But what the end result is, whether they select yes or no, the organization is still going to get 100% of the donation. And this does have a cap as well. The cap is $3,000. So any donations higher than $3,000, I think it just kind of defaults to the organization pays. I don't know what language it provides for the donor, but I know $3,000 is the limit. For donor pays, it gives you the option for the donor to cover the credit card fee. And it is a standard percent. I think it's like maybe 3 or 4%, something like that. It does not look at the credit card type. So we know American Express has a little bit of a higher credit card fee. It just is a standard percent, and again, around 3 or 4%. And it allows the donor to say, yes, I'd like to cover that. And so a $100 donation may turn into a $103.50 donation to the organization. So the gift amount is increased by that. If they select no, it'll kind of default to the My Organization Pays, and you're going to cover the fee. There are some studies out there that say like when prompted, donors will cover that additional fee like 60 or 70% of the time. So this could result, if you're looking at throughout the course of a year and all of your online gifts, it could be resulting in thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars of additional revenue to the organization. One of the options here, and this will come over. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Is that under settings? Is it under control panel, right, Christine?
Yeah.
For the fund? Yeah. One of the things that we can set, and so again, this is maybe a discussion that they have with finance, is that you can set a specific fund for that additional cost. And so usually this is a bookkeeping thing where that $100 needs to go to the fund that they selected in the donation. That $3.50 that's above and beyond would maybe get routed to a different fund on the general ledger. So we can set that fund here under donor covered designation, and it will come over as a split gift.
Audrey just asked a really good question, so I want to highlight it for everybody about if donors get a tax write-off. For donor pay, absolutely, because the credit card transaction is that whole transaction is coming to your organization. It's a donation, even though it's covering fees, it is a donation to you. Blackbaud pays, everything I've seen says no. If there's a documentation out there that's different, that is IRS approved, then I will stand corrected, but you will not see that amount for the Blackbaud pays. It does not come to you. It goes straight to Blackbaud. So you can't issue a tax receipt for it.
And as
And
we all know,
Blackbaud is not a nonprofit. So
I was getting ready to say that. Yeah.
Don't see how Blackbaud is issuing one either. So it's a no, unless there's something else there that I'm missing, but that's everything I've read that's a no. The other piece that I do want to mention, because Kevin, you mentioned percentages, Blackbaud pays is not going to be the standard 3%. I've heard varying reports of what that percent can look like. I personally have seen it averaging about 10%. It's also opted in until the donor opts out, whereas donor cover is opted out until the donor opts in. And I think that's an important distinction for you to know.
Yeah. And the one thing, if you're thinking about switching how you do your processing, is you can create a dummy donation form and kind of see what it looks like in real time. So put yourself in the shoes of a donor, go to fill out your form and just see what it's like to see if it makes sense. Oftentimes organizations, they have kind of a reputation, or their donors may have a reputation where it's completely out of bounds to ask them to cover any additional fees. So we're just going to stick with organization pays. And some are like the exact opposite. So it makes complete sense to kind of switch over those fees.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else about this, Christine, before we go on to the next topic?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right. So it is May 28th. So for a lot of organizations, we are approaching the end of our fiscal year. So this is something that I've talked a lot about on different webinars, but something I did in practice when I was at my school before I joined NPact. What we called the printer's proof of the annual report. And so usually around this time, maybe end of July, beginning of August, we start having the conversations about our honor roll of donors. And this is I still get chills when I think about this from my database manager history. This was always like such a big task to do. So think about doing all that work where you're pulling the donor information, double checking to make sure that soft credits are right and hard credits are right and DAFs are done correctly and family foundations are done correctly. It's just a lot of work to put this list together. And kind of the scary part about it is as soon as you send it to the printer to get put into your magazine or whatever periodical or stuff you're going to send out, that becomes static information. And you can't get that toothpaste back in the tube once you send it to the printer. And so this is something we kind of developed and we started doing around this time of the year, right? So we're about 5 weeks away from the end of our fiscal year, 4.5 weeks. And we put together what we called the printer's proof of the annual report, or printer's proof of the honor roll of donors. And this is where we're basically doing a test run of our honor roll as if the fiscal year ended today. This is what it's going to look like. Now, this does pretty much double the amount of work that we're doing for pulling this list, but it allows the organization to use this printer's proof as another solicitation as we're approaching the end of our fiscal year. So basically just doing the honor roll as if from 7/1 to 5/28, and we put it all together. And instead of printing it, we put it together in one of those PDF flipbook things that is a very low cost to the organization. But it's saying like, this is what the magazine or this is what the list will look like as if we made it today, and send it out to everyone, the audience, through email that you would normally send your honor roll to. And what that does is allows them to see a couple different things. One is to see what level of giving they're at for the year. So oftentimes donors may want to bump up a level, or they don't like the fact that they're at the friend level, the lowest one, but they want to see at the, president circle or whatever. So it allows them to give an additional gift to raise their level. It also will allow them to make corrections to, maybe you have a typo in their name, maybe their spouse passed away, or maybe they got a divorce this year and you haven't received that information yet. You include language in that email to say, hey, if you see any inconsistencies or inaccuracies in this data, please let us know. Because they'll also say, hey, remember that gift I gave through my business at the beginning of the year? That's not being counted toward my total, and it probably should. So we're able to make those corrections. So it does a couple of things. And the most important thing is, when they send that information back to you, or if they tell you their name spelled wrong, make sure you go back and fix it in Razor's Edge, because you're going to run this list again in 8 weeks or a couple months or whatever, so that the next time you run it, all that information is going to be pulled correctly. So, but I have a couple things here on the screen here as it relates to just in terms of how do we do our honor roll. And very quickly, I'm going to show you, I'm going to jump back into WebView because this is where we edit all of our tables now. Included in one of those tables is the donor categories. And so we have them down here. Here's the three that kind of come with that are set up for us when we buy Razor's Edge. This is where we go to set up our donor categories. And these are minimum amounts. So think of it like as you're doing your levels, that this is like the minimum amount that gets them into this level. In this, so you can kind of see it goes sequentially up. So this is where you go to set up your donor categories. You have the ability to do 3. I think you might be able to add more. I don't know, but at least 3 are all here. So get your category set up first, and then we go to standard reports, which some are now available in WebView. So this donor category report is both in WebView and database view. And that's under analytical, and there's the donor category report. So I'm not going to go through this report all that much, but I at least want to show you that this is very similar, if not exact, to the same one that was available in database view. Just some things to point out that we want to make sure we're paying attention to is gift date being calendar year versus fiscal year. We also want to look at, do we want to look at gift dates or post dates? That really kind of depends on the organization. Most of the time it's going to be gift date, but we may want to do this off of post date as well. Soft credits, matching gifts. And then we have detail and summary here as well. So also going to point out the gift tab, gift types as well. So we can say what we want to include for what goes into that. We could probably do a webinar just specifically on this report, but I at least want to show you where that's at.
Yeah, and 2 quick things about reports in WebView if you haven't done it yet. One is you can schedule them, which is amazing, especially for things like, hey, I want a pledge status report to be generated immediately at the close of the month. Schedule it. And unlike database view, you do not have to do these in PDF. They can easily be done in a CSV as well.
Yeah, Carrie, I just answered your question. This is where you do that. So on the filters tab of this report, you have a fund option, campaign fund appeal, constituent code, all kinds of things. But yes, you do have a fund filter here that you can select which funds you want to include or exclude.
Yeah. And if you're using a large group of funds every time that you always exclude, that's where it said under fund, you can see it says select fund or select query. And I have found that to be a really great way to group a large number of funds that you always include or that you always exclude. It saves I missed one of the funds and now my report's wrong. So if you're doing something like that over and over, that's a quick tip.
Okay, so and Christine mentioned the schedule option. This is for every saved report that's available in WebView now. You have the option to schedule it. This is really cool. This is functionality that was kind of needed in database view, but now it's available for us. So you can do it just one time. You can do it recurring. You can set what time of day you want to do it and how often you want to do it. And then also you can email it to people as well, which is really cool. Okay, so jumping back into here. Do we have some rapid fire questions? Christine, you want to start off?
Sure. Is there a way to switch between displaying the campaign fund or appeal ID and description in the WebView? Unfortunately, this is a short answer and it's no, not right now. Database view, you can change that in your user options and you can choose if you want ID or description. Currently in WebView, you only get description. So if seeing the idea is important to you, there is an idea in the idea bank. I would definitely say, let's vote for that. But at the moment we get what we get until I guess we throw enough of a fit. I don't know. Quoting my grandma now.
That's why I tell my kids that. Yeah.
There you go. All right, Kevin, do you want to go for the next one?
Yeah. So action types and action categories. So action categories, I'm going to jump into just because the database view is just a tad bit faster. When we talk about action, when you're setting up a new action, we have a couple different things here to choose from. Category is hard coded so that you cannot change what options are here in these radio buttons, but action types are. And usually this becomes an unmanageable list because everyone thinks they have their own category, or I'm sorry, own type they want to add, real specific to what they're doing. And we can absolutely do that. But one tip I would just say is to clean this table up once a year to make sure that this doesn't become a bunch of redundant things like probably our test database does include as well. So the one piece of advice is just try to avoid being redundant with the category. So if we're having a mailing, the action type isn't going to be mailing. It should be something more specific to what the action is. Okay, let me jump back in here. What in the world are action tracks? I mentioned before I learned something new yesterday. I haven't had a ton of clients ask me about action tracks, and so I was kind of diving into it yesterday. Oops, let me go into database view. When we're in database view, we have the section for action tracks. And this was, well, the way I'd kind of equate it to, this was workflows before workflows are workflows now. This allows you to set up actions by tracks. And I'm just going to open up this one that we have kind of made up here, is that you can assign a group of constituents to an action track and allow further actions to happen based off of either like a certain number of days or based off of an action previously was completed. And so if once we mail this brochure in like 10 days, we're going to have this action assigned, and that'll stay open until this next one happens. 7 days later, this will happen, and so on and so on. But the way we think about using actions now is in the work center, what you have the ability to assign those actions to different solicitors. And so when we're in our work center, we see these upcoming actions or past due actions that need to take place. And so you assign a constituent to an action track and their solicitor will get notified because they'll see it here. And so you're kind of automating those action steps for kind of what happens in the future for these donors. That was a really quick look into action tracks. Christine, you want to do 4?
Yeah. Data health address finder. The question we got was about whether or not it automatically rechecks all addresses. It automatically checks the addresses that you've told it to. And I say that, if you can go to your web view, Kevin, and I know we're right about time, but go to under constituents, data health. When you go to address finder, okay, ours is not
we're not
set
gonna be able
up.
to get there. Yeah.
You have to choose a list. Or you can do all records, or you can do selected records. So if you've chosen all records, then yes, it will choose everybody. It will look at everybody in the system, whether they're marked as inactive or not. If you have chosen a list under selected records, it will only look at the people in that list. So that's where what you've chosen is really the key factor. Kevin, our last question, I believe the answer, unfortunately, is we don't know. Right. And that is, unfortunately, that's the answer. Membership is not fully in WebView for editing yet. I believe that they talked about that in the product update briefing, so I would encourage you to double check that. Also know that's always a projection, and sometimes it's still subject to change, but that'll be the most reliable place of information for that.
So I think we've done a good job of keeping up with questions in the chat. Just a couple of upcoming events that NPact is either participating in or hosting in. Christine is presenting at the Virtuous's Responsive Nonprofit Summit, which is next week.
It is. So next Wednesday.
Yeah, there'll be a link to register for that or to get some more information about that in the email. We do a Level Up webinar series for Financial Edge as well. So if you use FE or if you have people in your office that use Financial Edge, go ahead and send them the link to this. We just started this a couple months ago and we're getting good responses on registration. So our next one about Financial Edge reporting will be on June 18th. And the next Razor's Edge Level Up webinar will be June 25th. And we are going to be talking all things mailing lists. So we will actually include a question in the registration about if you have questions about mailing lists, you can submit those during registration and we'll do a kind of a similar format and try to answer everything, all the questions that you guys submit. We have some in-person user groups coming up. led by three of these are led or two of these are led by Christine, the one in Columbia, South Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. And then we have one of our Razor's Edge consultants, Angie Dunn, lives in Nebraska. And so she's hosting one in both Omaha and Lincoln. If you live around any of those areas, please, you can respond to my email that I send out this week, and I can give you some more information about that. This QR code will take you to our event page on our website that has all the information, registration information for everything that you see here on the screen. We've talked a lot about our consulting work. Here's kind of the ways that we help our clients. We have a fixed database assessment that we do. So if you know your database is in a mess, but you don't know where to start, we can do an assessment and kind of give you a good path on cleanup. We do a lot of training, both virtual and in person. And then we also just kind of sell consulting hours as well. So if you have a list of projects that you need someone to do for you, either you don't know how to do or you don't have enough time to do it, we can just sell you a bucket of hours, and then you can be meeting with your consultant and having them do that work for you. Those are also good for kind of back pocket hours if you have questions that come up throughout the year. Now, my last poll question, and we appreciate you guys sticking around for a couple of additional minutes. Our last poll question, if you are ready to help us make the most of your data, if you hit schedule, I'm ready to schedule a call today, I will be reaching out to you by the end of the week. But maybe now's not a good time. Maybe it's later in the year. Maybe it's next year. Maybe you're already a customer. And maybe the answer is I'm not interested, which is completely fine. We're happy to do this every month just to provide some information to help you all use your products a little bit better.
Absolutely.
And our last slide here is just our information. In case you have any questions about anything we talked about today, Christine and I are both available through email to answer any follow-up questions. And also, if you have any ideas about topics for webinars, we would love to hear those as well, because we want to make sure these webinars are informational and educational for you all. So we're happy to take suggestions on future webinars.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all very much. Thanks, Christine. We'll see you all next month.